This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. A lot of Cleveland Browns' problems this year come down to execution of some of its best players. They're just not getting the same level of play from some of these players that they relied on the last couple of years that they're expecting right now. And I think that's why they're not as good as a football team, or at least playing a big part into why they're not as good as a football team as we kind of expected them to be. So what players are underperforming? Who's on the hot seat coming into this week versus the Washington Commanders? Let's talk about it. Number one, I think, is obvious. It's Amari Cooper. It's the most obvious player on the hot seat. It's the most obvious player that we're disappointed in to start the year. I mean, Amari Cooper probably had one of the most highly regarded reputations amongst Browns fans coming into the season. And now it feels like everybody wants to either trade Amari Cooper or cut Amari Cooper because of their disappointment in his performance. Now, I'm not ready to give up on Amari Cooper just yet. I think Amari Cooper's problems, as frustrating as it might be, are more mental than they are physical, right? I don't think this is a physical decline for Amari Cooper. I think this is a mental block for him. I think he's frustrated. I think there's something wrong with the communication between him and the quarterback, because this is not usual for Amari Cooper. And it's also not usual when Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson play together. These two have had good games together multiple times. I've seen them have excellent chemistry multiple times. Like, these guys know how to play together, but for whatever reason, it seems like it's just off sync with those two more so than anybody else. Like, it's on sync as it looks like it is for Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy. Like, sometimes it feels like Jerry Jeudy is thinking what Deshaun Watson is thinking at the same exact time and then acting upon it. It's the exact opposite with Amari Cooper. I can count 4 or 5 plays this season alone where it could have been a big play, but Amari does something that Deshaun's not expecting, or Deshaun does something that Amari's not expecting, and instead of a completion or even an attempt at a completion, we're getting the ball thrown 15 yards over the head of a wide receiver. And sometimes it's a route choice that Amari Cooper makes the wrong decision on. Sometimes it's Deshaun Watson who makes the wrong decision. Sometimes it's Amari Cooper who drops the football, and most of the time it's been Amari Cooper not catching the football, if we're being honest about it. It's just a number of things that just don't feel right with Amari Cooper. He's certainly not playing well. And while I can write some of this off with, like, hey, Amari Cooper does give you 3 bad games a year pretty consistently. He gave you 3 bad games in 2023. He gave you 3 bad games in 2022. It's just happening at the beginning of the season. Maybe it's just a coincidence that he's playing this poorly at the beginning of the year, but he'll fix it and play like Amari Cooper for the rest of the year. Like, that's still a possibility. But if he drops another stank bomb next week, then I got to start asking, like, is it over for Amari Cooper for whatever reason? Like, is this fixable? Can they get this to a place to where he can play high quality football again? Because the Browns need Amari Cooper to play at that number 1 wide receiver level for this offense to work the way that they want it to. He's been a huge part of that. And recently he's been able to do that. Again, this is somebody who's had over 1,200 yards 2 seasons in a row. He's had career highs in touchdowns and yards both seasons he's been in Cleveland. I find it hard to believe that he's physically just completely fallen off, because even if he did start to fall off, it would be a bit more subtle than this. He's not that old so far in his career. So I think with Amari, I think they need to simplify the communication between those two. They need to figure out what are they reading differently like when they see the field and what's causing them to be so out of sync on these choice routes, and also what's going on with Amari Cooper to where he's not catching at the level that you would expect. Is this frustration? Is it something with how the ball is getting to him? Like whatever is going on between those two really needs to get figured out, because Washington could put up points this week, and you really need your number one wide receiver to play like a number one wide receiver if you want to keep up in a game with the offense executing at the efficiency that Washington has. Like, this is a team that I believe has a score percentage that's out of this world offensively, right? So you want to make sure that if it becomes a shootout, you can keep pace, and Amari Cooper has to play well in order for that to be the case. The second player I think is on the hot seat is Zadarius Smith. Now, this is a guy who I think is playing very poorly that not a lot of people have paid attention to. The run game issues for the Cleveland Browns, I think, are stemmed exclusively on the defensive line. I think the run defense issues are because they don't have any defensive tackles outside of Dalvin Tomlinson who are making any difference in the run game. And then I think the edges, particularly Zadarius Smith, is not playing well on the edge. Alex Wright was also somebody else who wasn't playing well in run defense on the edge, but he's out for the year, so it doesn't really matter anymore. But Zadarius Smith has been bad in run defense for this team. He ranks 47th out of 50 in run defense grades, according to Pro Football Focus. He has the lowest stop percentage of all edges in the NFL right now. He has the 9th highest average depth of tackle. Keep in mind, Miles is at 5th, so it's not like Miles is a solution to the run defense either right now. He's struggling as well. And then it's also Obo Okoronkwo has the 3rd highest missed tackle percentage. Like, the Browns defensive line is really failing them in run defense. And I think if this defensive line starts to play better, you're going to see a dramatic difference in how this defense looks. I know we talk a lot about what Jim Schwartz does do, what he doesn't do, what he could do to make the defense more complex a lot, but at the end of the day, a Jim Schwartz defense is only going to be as good as their defensive line is. And right now, the state of the Browns defensive line is like this. Miles is as good as he's ever been in pass rushing. He's still excellent in that area. But Miles is playing less snaps this year because of all the injuries that he's still coming off of that he got against Dallas. So he's taking less snaps, 7% less snaps, right? He's usually at 81% of defensive snaps. Now he's at 72% of defensive snaps. So Miles is taking less snaps. On top of that, the players on the defensive line who aren't Myles Garrett aren't playing particularly well outside of Dalvin Tomlinson. Shelby Harris is playing a little bit underwhelming football right now. Quentin Jefferson, is playing really bad football, at least on run defense. Same thing can be true for Zadarius Smith. Same thing could be said for a lot of the other players on this defensive line. So I think you really need these guys outside of Myles Garrett to really step up. And I think if you get that, you'll see a much better performance from this team. I mean, even when we're talking about pass rushing, like, the Browns are blitzing way more than they used to blitz. And I'm going to talk about that later on because I think that factors into why Martin Emerson looks the way he does. But they're blitzing way more than they used to blitz last year, about 5% more often than they did all 2023. So what I'm wondering is why that is the case, and I feel like they don't trust their front four alone to be able to get pressure because they can't get pressure that way, right? Zadarius Smith has also dropped off as a pass rusher. Last year, he had the 8th highest edge rush grade according to Pro Football Focus, and he had an 18.1 win percentage, which was top 10 in the NFL. This year, he's 20th graded in the NFL, and his pass rush win rate is down 3.2%. So he's not as effective as a pass rusher. He's awful as a run defender right now, and he's really creating a lot of problems for this Browns defense. Zadarius Smith, simply put, has to play much better than he's been playing the last couple of games. I thought he would play better coming into the season because he dealt with the foot injury most of 2023. I thought he would be healthy. That would lead to him playing much better football. But to start the year, he's been much worse than he was last year, and it's starting to take its toll on this Browns defense. And I think if he plays better, if the rest of this defensive line outside of Myles Garrett plays better, then this defense is going to start to look like it did last year. Because the Jim Schwartz defense, again, only as good as the defensive line plays. If your defensive line does not play, then you're going to see all the flaws of the Jim Schwartz defense. But if your defensive line is playing great, Jim Schwartz defense is going to look amazing. That's kind of how it works with it. The third player I think is on the hot seat right now is Martin Emerson. He's been bad. Like, I had to inquire with people who know about if Martin Emerson is injured or not right now, because something's gotta be up with his level of play. He's been awful. He's never been a strong run defender. His 22% missed tackle percentage in run defense, that's not abnormal, right? His 16.7 missed tackle percentage in passing play, that's not been abnormal, nor is that bad of a number. That ranks within the middle of all DBs. Where I am concerned about Martin Emerson is his performance in man-to-man, and specifically the drop-off that he's had in zone coverage. So he's never been the strongest man-to-man guy. We talked about it. He's a tall corner. He's not super fast or twitchy. So sometimes he struggles in man-to-man coverage, especially versus faster receivers. We saw what this looked like versus Malik Neighbors. And in man-to-man, he's the lowest graded corner that starts in the NFL. He's also, just like an overall coverage grade right now, the lowest graded corner according to Pro Football Focus in all of football. His zone grades, though, are what concern me the most, and it does show up on his tape. If you watch my film breakdown on the defense, he's not been great in zone. He's 45th out of 72 players graded in zone coverage. Last year, he was the 16th best zone cover corner in the NFL. Now, why is this the case? I think there are two reasons. One, Martin is significantly later to react for whatever reason this year than he was last year. Is it an injury? Is it a change in what they want Martin to be responsible for? Like, is it a coaching thing? Why he's late to respond, especially in these cushions that he gets in zone? Or is it a physical thing for Martin Emerson? I'm not quite sure what the answer is for that, but there's something there. I also think a lot of this has to do with how the Browns draw up coverages when they blitz. I mentioned earlier that the Browns are blitzing more than they used to blitz last year, and I don't like that change. I think that change is making them far too vulnerable. I get the idea is that you're going to be able to get home and get a big play, get a TFL, but oftentimes when the Browns blitz, they end up leaving a wide open answer for the quarterback immediately that allows them to get 10 free yards without any worry. And that's usually the answer is right where Martin Emerson is sitting, because he has to give a giant cushion and he plays off the cushion because he doesn't want to get beat deep. And they're just taking advantage of that. Like I showed in the Giants film breakdown for the defense this week, there were like 4 straight plays where the Giants just ran an out right at Martin Emerson's cushion whenever the Browns blitz, because they knew they would have it for an easy 10 yards every time. The Browns got to stop blitzing as much. I hate how they're covering the back end of these blitzes this year compared to what they did last year. I really don't think it's sound strategy. Like last year, the Browns would play man when they would blitz. Now they're trying to get creative and run all these shells in the back end. And it resembles some of what Tennessee was doing the last couple of years. And I wonder, with all the sim pressures that we've added in, with the way that we cover on the back end of these blitzes, like how much of this is Mike Vrabel's influence? Because this is stuff I did see Tennessee used to do. And I wonder if that's like an effect of his consulting. If it is, you got to take different advice there, because it has not been successful for this Cleveland Browns team. Now they might be doing this stuff with Martin because they're trying to hide an injury or something like that. And if it's physical, you got to seriously start to consider other guys, right? Like Martin Emerson has not played better than Cam Mitchell this year, and that's a disappointment because Martin is a really good corner when he's playing at a high level, but he has not been better than Cam Mitchell this year. I would argue that the Browns would probably be a better defense right now, given how Cam has played in zone versus Martin has played in zone, if Cam was out there more often. And if he has another game like he's had the last few weeks, I'm going to get to the point where I suggest that you got to just sit Martin for a little while till he figures out what's going on with himself, because right now he's like actively being a detriment to this Browns defense, especially on third down. He's getting them killed. So he has to have a better game this week if he is healthy. I talked about the entire interior of this defensive line. Special teams, I think, needs to step up. Look, a lot of people are mad about the missed extra point. I don't know. For me, so many other chances for the Browns to win that game happen that I can't sit here and be furious at the mixed extra point. I'm not happy with it, but I'm not furious with it. Like, that's actually something that I'm willing to let D-Hop get a slide on because he's been so reliable for this team. I mean, he even made like a 55-yard field goal earlier in this game. So I'm not going to be too furious about that with D-Hop. I really just want to put the onus on the offense executing in that last drive a little bit better, right? Why can't the center get a clean snap off to the quarterback? Why are we even in a 2nd and 16? Like, the Browns should not have even been thinking about a field goal, regardless of if that game was within 3 points or not at the end of that game, because when they got the ball to the 15, there was a really good chance, a high percentage chance, that if they just kept regular down and distances, that they should be able to score the football in the end zone and win the game, you know? So that's where my frustrations are, but you just want to see Dustin Hopkins have a bit of a bounce back. It ain't too deep with him, but that's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.